Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Connection Show. I'm your host, Katie Augustin. So I'm a transformation coach. I'm an energy healer. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I'm a spiritual teacher. And I'm the head of the Transformation Center located in Westport, Connecticut. So at the center, in addition to the individual healing and coaching sessions that I do, we also have different workshops and classes. We have sound baths in the backyard in the nice weather. We have a labyrinth in the backyard that, we incorporate into most of our offerings, which is great. And, at the center, our whole purpose is to really assist you in developing that self-awareness and experiencing it and learning more about your own spiritual nature, who you really are, letting go of what you are not. So then you can live the life that you love and be here, to fulfill your purpose. So we welcome beginners, anybody who's interested. I'm going to put up our contact info and you can see how to contact us. Everything is on the website, transformationcenterct.com. There it is. And there's an event calendar. You can register for anything there. We also, one thing that we have regularly every month, the second Tuesday of the month, is a Shamanic Clinic. And this is on Zoom. And it's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about shamanism in a very, very easy way, because you're given a half-hour time slot and you go with your own private practitioner into a breakout room and you can experience an extraction healing and medicine drumming. So you get that. And it's really a community service. So there's no specific charge. You can make a donation if you want. But anyway, check that out whenever you get a chance. All right. So most of you who are familiar with the show know that the Spiritual Connection Show is all about connection. And that's because it's one of my core values. I love meeting new people, connecting with them, finding out about their journey, who they are, what they're up to. So I invite you to share in that experience, to learn for yourself, connect with your own spiritual self during this time and find out what my guests have to offer for you. So thank you for being here. And I'm very excited today to welcome my guest, Greg Barringer. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we were able to do this. I met Greg not too long ago, actually, a few weeks ago at an event up at Sticks and Stones Farm. And he was one of the practitioners offering a workshop, and we did some breath work. And, I just loved everything that he had to share. And I know you will enjoy hearing from him today. So thanks again for being here, Greg.
Thank you. All
right, so I'm going to put up your contact info so everybody can know how to reach you. So Greg's Soul Journeys is the name of his operation, and his website is right there, souljourneys.net. And I'm going to read a little bit like an introduction so you can get to know Greg before we get started. So Greg Barringer has been on a journey of self-discovery and love for nearly 40 years. He has committed his life to learning and serving others in ways which manifest inner and outer peace, authentic connection, and a vibrant sense of aliveness. Greg teaches various lineages of yoga and meditation. He guides energy, breath work, and sound healing ceremonies. He offers individual Thai yoga massage, as well as life, career, and relationship counseling. Wow, quite an array of services there. Because overall, Greg is committed to bringing the time-honored wisdom of yoga, meditation, and spiritual energy to our everyday lives, and which I love. That's just awesome. So I'm going to ask you the first question that we always start with, which I know you know this. Can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey thus far, like into this, anything you want to share, really?
Sure. Well, I want to thank you for my being here and for inviting me to join you on this journey of transformation and just this journey of life. I mean, it's, as you said, we just met each other a few weeks ago. And what I love about it is that we're just saying, well, what's here? Like, we notice this connection, we notice a sort of an affinity, and now we're just on this kind of, well, let's see what we're supposed to do here. And I just really appreciate that and love that about you and about the energy that we're following and creating together. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. And I know we have a retreat coming up this weekend, and you're going to be coming for part of that. And I'm really touched by that. And I just want to thank you for that courage and sense of exploration on your part.
That's it. That's exactly it. And that's what I encourage everyone to do, because that's how we learn and live and grow and evolve, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to get to your question, thank you again for giving me that question beforehand, because it got me a chance to think about my spiritual journey and really where it began. And as I kind of thought about it, I thought about this book right here, Illusions by Richard Bach. I don't know how many people out there will be familiar with it, but this book was given to me when I was about 16 years old. It just come out. I just looked at it. It was it first came out in 1977. Richard Bach was the guy who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, as well as several other books. But this was given to me by a friend of my dad's, who I had also kind of befriended. He had taken us on some hiking and camping trips in northern Maine. So I was already kind of getting to know the outdoors and how to be outdoors and camp outdoors with him. And he gave me this book, and he said, here, you might like it. And it really shifted my perspective on life reading that book. There are all these little aphorisms in it. The book is called Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And in the book, there's a kind of handbook that he gets handed, the Messiah, and the protagonist in the book gets handed this Messiah's handbook, and it has all these little aphorisms in it. And one of which was, in the path of our happiness, shall we discover the learning for which we have chosen this lifetime. And I love that. I realized that, oh, this is like a philosophy here, right? This is a kind of like, what is our path? What journey are we meant to go on? And we can actually use what brings us joy, what brings us happiness, what fills us with a sense of possibility, right? As our guide, but it turns out that for most of us, right, we've all tried that to some extent, but we've all run into roadblocks along the way, right? Sometimes things don't work out, or sometimes things get in the way of us following our path. It turns out, however, we can keep going back to it. We can keep asking ourselves, what brings me joy? What brings me peace? What brings me equanimity? What brings me to a sense of connectedness, right? These things that we might define as happiness. Happiness is a little nebulous sometimes, but there are elements of happiness which we can really relate to, the ones that I've just mentioned. And so this book that was handed to me when I was a sophomore in high school basically changed my life. I started to kind of reorient myself less around, okay, how do I need to fit in? How do I need to prove myself worthy? And more into, what do I find interesting? What brings me a sense of aliveness? What brings me a sense of adventure? And how can I do more of that? And yes, there are other things that I need to do in life. We all need to figure out a career and how we're going to make a living and how we're going to relate with others and all that sort of stuff. But this has become a sort of underlying principle in my life. And what brings me to a sense of peace? What brings me to a sense of joy? And then just finding the other people in my life that can help me get to those places, and the other practices, the other activities. And so, yeah, I've just kind of been doing that ever since.
Wow, that is amazing, Greg. I mean, how fortunate that you had somebody to give you this. It's like a guide in a way. It's like an inner guide.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like, because it sounds like you were able to develop like a self-awareness that most people that young, don't get to develop at that age, right?
Yeah, I can tell another quick story about that same time. My dad was doing something for work, and he had to take the Myers-Briggs test. You guys remember that, when you do the four aspects of your personality? And so he took it, and he thought it was pretty interesting. And he hands it to me and says, "Hey, you might find this interesting," right? So I took it as well, and I thought it was incredible. It was another one of these experiences where you got to see yourself from another perspective, right? So you got to sort of see yourself through the lens of this tool, and I thought it was amazing. So I remember taking it to school. I remember making copies of it, like making copies back then, it was a project to making copies of it, taking it to school. And I'm like, again, a sophomore in high school, I think, and taking it to school and sharing it with about 8 or 9 of my friends, right? My friends, so to speak. So I give it to them and they look at it, check it out and say, why would I want to do this? Like, this looks stupid to me. All of them, every single one of them, none of them brought it back with like, oh, wow, this is. So it was right then that I realized, oh, I am on some different path here. Because I really thought it was pretty amazing, right? And when you think something's amazing and you're 14, 15 years old and your friends think it's stupid, you're like, okay, something is off here.
Right.
And it could very well be me. I remember actually having a little bit of existential angst about the whole thing, like realizing I put myself out there and was getting pretty, I wouldn't call it totally negative feedback, but just nobody was like saying, oh yeah, I think this is cool too, And so right there, I started to realize, oh, I am probably going on another journey here other than where my contemporaries are going. And so
yeah, definitely. In fact, that was one question I was thinking to ask while you were describing that and the prior experience. Like, how did your contemporaries, like, who did you find? Like, how did you find people that were on that same journey, that had similar interests and desires?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. It took a long time, honestly. And I fortunately I ended up leaving high school early, going to college in Boston and getting really into rowing. So I became a pretty accomplished athlete. And that was actually my spiritual practice for a long time, was really just following this line of how can I be the best athlete I can be. And at one point I was amongst one of the best rowers in the country. And so, I just took that, and that became sort of almost like a spiritual practice for me, was just this commitment to the discipline and the community of athletes and rowers that I got involved in. And it wasn't until late in that I started doing yoga and meditation. And I came to yoga and meditation as a way to help me as an athlete. Basically, I had learned that, you can do some relaxation and some flexibility. And I knew by then that those two things were going to help me as an athlete. And so I remember taking my first yoga class, and this is back in the early 90s, at the Cambridge Adult Education Center in Harvard Square. And so I went and I took this class, and this lovely woman taught it. And I remember having a really good experience. And then I walked out, and it was a spring day. And you know how they have those buds on the trees, they're just coming out. It was a sunny day. And I remember being like blown away. I was like, wow, what just happened to me? All of a sudden that everything seemed brighter and clearer. And it was just like something has happened to me in this yoga class. And that was sort of my awakening to, there's something else out here in terms of practices that I can do. And so that's when I really started diving into yoga. And a few years later, got into meditation and just started to realize there were these other things that I could do besides just my rowing, which in a lot of ways did have, rowing is a very repetitive with a lot of breathing, right? Repetitive, which is a kind of mantra in and of itself. So I realized I was getting into transcendent states just through the rowing itself. I was getting, time, you lose a sense of time. You have a powerful feeling of being part of something greater than yourself. And so I realized later that was my precursor to yoga, was these years of rowing were basically like, for some people, like sitting in meditation for years every day. I was doing this every day for hours. And so, and so it was kind of like my precursor to yoga and meditation was through being an athlete. And then it just kind of made sense that I was going to get more into the yoga, and then eventually into the meditation, eventually into the breath work, eventually into the sound. I mean, you start to realize all these things are coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. It's like one thing leads to the next.
Yeah, I'm a slow learner, but eventually I get there.
Well, yeah, and the prerequisite is really just being open and curious and seeing the benefits.
Yes.
So it's like you see the benefits, so then you want more, and you keep that going, and we all, I think we all love this learning process. It never ends, right?
Right. But it was interesting. I can go back and say, I had that first thing of, in the path of our happiness, shall we find the learning for which we've chosen this lifetime. I remember being in college and people, my family, asking me, like, what are you doing with your life? What are you majoring in? What are you doing with it? And I would answer to them, well, I'm rowing a lot. And they would be like, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I really love it, And so it's like, so it's going to take me somewhere. And I just believed in them. For a while, I became a rowing coach. And then I ended up moving to Connecticut to run a rowing program here. I ran a whole club, basically. So it did take me somewhere. I just had no idea where it was going to take me.
Well, yeah. And clearly that was your path, and that brought you joy. And, I think what gets in the way for so many people is just kind of what you just said about having expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Things have to be a certain way. They have to be a certain way in order to, quote, be successful.
Right. Well, most of our anxiety comes around our expectations, in terms of what we want to see happen, and then how attached are we to that desire. It's not that we shouldn't want things good for ourselves and others. It's how attached are we to it showing up a certain way that ends up causing us untold amounts of problems and a lot of suffering, not only for ourselves, but for others. One things for most of us, we tend to react not so great when things don't work out. And then we tend to, blame others, project onto others, yell at others. It's all got to do with that initial expectation, right?
That's true. And especially if it's hard enough when we have unrealistic or misconstrued expectations for ourselves, but then when we let other people, when we take on their expectations, I think that's also problematic.
Sure.
Parents or peers or whatever. It sounds like you were fortunate because you didn't let that deter you.
Well, it's always a balance. We're I think until most of us, until we're like 35, 40 years old, we're basically just trying to fit in the best we can. It's like we've got a program that's basically being given to us, and we're trying to figure out where in that program, what niche in this program can I just do and fit in? Because all of us want to fit in to a certain extent. That moment back in high school that I just said, that was actually pretty difficult. I realized I wasn't fitting in here, and when you're 15, 16 years old, fitting in is pretty important, But it turns out to be pretty important for a while. Yeah. And some people for their whole lives. And at some point, sometimes in your late 30s, early 40s, you start to wake up one day and just realize, well, whose life am I living? Am I living my life, or am I living somebody else's life for them? Like, am I living for those expectations, my parents, my partners, even my children? By now, you've got all these roles that you're playing for all these people. Is it really you? Or is it, these are what these people want from me, this is what they expect from me, and I'm just trying to kind of shuck and jive and get along as best I can,
Yeah. No,
so there's a balance there between, yes, I'm here for others, and I'm here for myself and for my own self-realization, which can involve and will involve others. Now that's the irony of it is it is actually about all of our evolution, but sometimes it requires bumping up against these expectations, comfort zones. I mean, and it'll keep happening. I had a big one happen this summer, big one with my own family, of like my seeing that something could evolve in a certain way. And they were like, yeah, no way, we're shutting that right down. And so, it's going to keep happening. But we get better at it, and we get better at moving through the waves and through the ups and downs. And so that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the way you describe it, it's like total makes sense, because, first we have to understand ourselves and what it is that does make us feel fulfilled and have things in our life that are meaningful. I'm sure you work with people as well as I do that, they don't really know what's missing, or why they aren't feeling fulfilled or happy, or, whatever word they want to use. Right. They don't understand.
I had a funny experience, or funny is not quite the right word, ironic experience the other day, where I had one of my student clients talk to me about what was going on with their weekend and how she felt kind of overwhelmed by all the family commitments with her parents and her children and her husband and all these sort of things. And so, she got that out, and I stopped for a moment. I said, well, what would you do if you didn't have to do all those things? And she kind of went like this, and she said, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. Right. Which, and that was like, we really just got kind of stuck there for a little while, and then we backtracked. But my point to that story is people can get so caught up in their identities, in how they are serving others, that to even ask the question, well, what would you do for yourself today if you could? It's like a no man's land. You're all of a sudden now in a place that you just haven't spent any time really contemplating or any sitting with. And it does take some practice to be able to sit with that and to say, what would really feel, where is my joy? And often it is in helping others and serving others, but it's seldom completely in there, right?
Right. As long as you do it in a way that is serving you as well. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Or they give you room and space for yourself at times. And that's adult life is really, how do we create that room and space for ourselves as well as for others? Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's what, like, you help your individual clients with, is looking inward. And could you just describe a little bit how you work with individuals?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So I work with individuals in sort of different ways. It really kind of depends on what they come to me with and what they're working on themselves. Sometimes it's a health related issue, a physicality related issue. So we might talk a little bit about health, wellness, and lifestyle, exercise. We might start to integrate yoga into that, or even some diet issues and things like that. A lot of people also come with just some kind of relationship issue, either with their primary relationship, a family relationship, or a relationship with work. And we kind of use mindfulness, meditation, some techniques like that to start to kind of gain some insights, not only into the situation at hand, whatever, but also our role in it. Because it turns out that we've been a co-conspirator in our own relationships, right? And we have actually helped to create some of the less than functional aspects of our relationships. And so what I really try to focus on is not so much the situation, but our role in the situation, and what might we do differently to possibly beget different outcomes, or just even to feel better about the way things are, right? Because a lot of relationship work is about acceptance of ourselves and others, and then how can we move from there, rather than necessarily trying to change things. And so,
Yes.
sometimes I'll do that. I often do, as you mentioned at the beginning, some Thai body work. Sometimes I combine Thai body work with breath work. It depends. If we want to start to open up the energy lines, if people are feeling kind of constricted, dense, if they have a kind of constriction somewhere in the body, sometimes I'll work with those physical aspects as well. Depends on if it's in person or online. There are kind of different modalities that we might work with in those ways. So I really love working with individuals because it's really a place where you can kind of see the most growth in some ways, where you can really sort of take somebody where they're at to a kind of new level of both energy and understanding of themselves and how everything's going. So it's great.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for describing that. And I know you also do a lot of group different things, workshops, retreats, events. What you want to tell us a little bit about what's coming up?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've got this retreat coming up this weekend, which is just a 2-day retreat up in Reading at the meditation center there, the Buddhist Meditation Center. And that's just going to be it's kind of a weekend of rejuvenation. I've been calling it like a yoga spa day, basically. It's like, we're going to do some yoga, we're going to do some meditation, do some breathing, we'll do some journaling, we'll have some nice food. It's basically a day to take care of yourself. And so people are going to come either Saturday or Sunday, or some people will come both days. And we're just going to kind of walk ourselves through a rejuvenation practice where we're just going to take care of ourselves, and we're going to be together with like-minded, like-hearted people. So that's always kind of nice. We feel this sort of sense of kindredness and connection with others. It's in a beautiful place. So it's really a self-care weekend. And I love doing those. Sometimes my longer retreats. So I have a retreat coming up in April in Costa Rica, and those will be more kind of self-work, where the first week of that is going to be on sort of learning how to love ourselves and others more authentically. So we'll work on what are the blocks in ourself that might keep us from either loving ourselves better, which a lot of us suffer from a sense of not being good enough, not, self-worth issues. Almost everybody has some issue with that. I've had issues with that. So we're going to work on releasing some of that then allows us to have not only a more loving and authentic relationship with ourselves, but relationships with other people as well. The second week is going to be what I'm calling like awakening and empowering the goddess, which has to do with kind of getting in alignment with our kind of soul's purpose, as well as balancing out the masculine and feminine energies. So in my opinion, we're too masculine a society in general. So all that fitting in that I was talking about earlier is fitting into a patriarchy, basically. So whether you're male or female, you're trying to fit into this patriarchal system, which in my opinion is sort of destroying the planet at this point. And so we need to have a more of a goddess and matriarchal system that is more about nurturing and stewardship. So in order to
sounds
do that,
beautiful.
We need to empower that aspect of ourselves. So we're going to do practices that basically empower our feminine energy, as well as kind of awakening ourselves, getting us more in alignment with our source energy and source wisdom.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we're just about out of time.
I know. We've
gone so fast.
Well,
I know, but well, thank you for sharing all that. That's in April coming up. I'm going to look into that. And we have like about 20 seconds left. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up?
Well, I just want to thank you. Really, I feel like I've kind of just fire hosed everything out here for the last half an hour. But I just want to thank you so much, Katie, for inviting me to be here. I'm really grateful. I look forward to wherever our journey takes us. And just thank you so much.
All right. I just put your contact up again. So thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing a lot of you over the weekend at the retreat. All right.
Wonderful. Namaste.
All right. Namaste. Bye-bye.